A dying billionaire asked his maid to stay one night, and his final confession shattered her heart. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. The night began so quietly that even the old Hale Estate seemed to be holding its breath. Rain tapped softly against the tall windows, the kind of steady rhythm that made the mansion feel even larger, even lonelier. Lina Martinez tightened her grip on the silver tray in her hands as she climbed the last flight of stairs toward the private East Wing, a place most staff never entered unless summoned. She'd worked as a maid here for almost 2 years, long enough to know the unspoken rules: don't ask questions, don't linger, and never disturb Adrian Hale unless the head butler approved it. But tonight, everything was different. Mr. Hale's personal physician had arrived in a rush earlier that evening, his face grey, his voice low as he spoke with the butler behind shut doors. And then, out of nowhere, Lina had been called upstairs. No one told her why. No one even looked her in the eye. The hall felt colder than usual as she approached the final door. She swallowed hard before knocking gently. "Come in," a faint voice rasped from inside. Lina pushed the door open slowly. The room was dim, lit only by a single lamp on the nightstand. And there, half sitting against a stack of pillows, was Adrian Hale, the billionaire she had barely spoken more than 5 words to since the day she was hired. His shoulders, once broad and commanding, seemed smaller now under the weight of an illness that had stolen too much too quickly. His breath came shallow, and the edges of his voice trembled as if every word cost him something. He looked at her for a long moment, longer than he ever had before. "Lina," he whispered, the name almost collapsing off his tongue. "Tonight, don't leave." She froze. "So?" His eyes softened, the way a storm softens right before it breaks. "Stay with me," he murmured. "Just one night." She felt something shift in the room, an invisible thread pulling tight around them both. This wasn't an order. It wasn't even a request from a man of power. It was the plea of someone afraid to sleep alone. Of course, she managed, though her voice shook. She placed the tray down and moved closer, unsure what to do with her hands, unsure why he wanted her here at all. Adrian watched her quietly, his gaze tracing her face as if memorizing it. "You remind me," he murmured, almost to himself, "of someone I failed to protect." Lina's breath caught, but before she could ask what he meant, a sudden wave of pain seemed to pull his attention inward. He pressed a hand to his chest, wincing, and she instinctively reached forward to steady him. For a brief second, his fingers curled around hers, weak, trembling, but intentional. And that single touch sent a strange ache through her ribs, something she didn't understand yet. "I'm fine," he whispered, though they both knew he wasn't. She helped him adjust his pillows, guided the glass of water to his lips, and draped the heavy blanket closer to his shoulders. He watched every move she made as if the simple act of being cared for was unfamiliar to him. "Lina," he said again, softer this time, "I don't want to be alone tonight." She nodded, pulling a chair closer to his bedside. She tried to smile, tried to ease the fear tightening the edges of his voice. But her own heart was pounding. Something was wrong, terribly wrong, and she could feel it in the stillness of the room, in the way he kept looking at her like he had waited years for this moment. Outside, the rain grew heavier. Inside, the truth lay curled somewhere behind his tired eyes, waiting for the courage to come out. And Lina didn't know it yet, but before the sunrise, Adrian Hale's final confession would break her heart in ways she never imagined. The rain outside softened into a steady whisper against the tall windows, and for a moment Lina wondered if Adrian Hale had fallen asleep. His breathing had slowed, but his eyes remained open, watching the shadows on the ceiling as if they carried memories only he could see. She sat beside his bed, hands clasped in her lap, unsure if she should speak first. But then his voice drifted through the quiet. Lina, do you ever think about the life you lost before you even had a chance to live it? She blinked, startled by the question. Sir, I am not sure I understand. His lips curved into a faint, tired smile. Of course you do. You work here. You hide your whole world behind that uniform. She felt her cheeks grow warm, but she stayed still. I know more than you think, he murmured. About your brother. About the medical bills you carry like a shadow. Lina's breath caught. She had never told anyone those things. Not the staff, not the butler, not even the house manager. Adrian looked at her gently, as if the truth itself was fragile. I listen, Lina. This house has a way of echoing the things people think are secrets. He shifted slightly and winced, and she quickly reached forward to support him. His hand brushed hers again, and this time he did not let go. Thank you, he whispered. You always move like you are afraid to disturb something sacred. She swallowed hard. I just want to do my job well. You do, he said. Better than you know. His thumb moved weakly against her palm, a slow, unconscious gesture that made her chest tighten. She gently eased him back onto the pillows, adjusting the blanket the way the doctor had shown her. As she smoothed the edge of the fabric over his shoulder, she noticed something on the nightstand. A small wooden box, old, with a brass lock that had tarnished over time. She had seen it every day she cleaned the room, but tonight its presence felt heavier, almost deliberate. Sir, she asked softly, is there anything you need? His gaze followed hers to the box. A shadow fell across his face. Not yet, he whispered. When it is time, you will understand. Lina hesitated, sensing that whatever waited inside that box was not just an object but a truth waiting to be exposed. She felt the weight of it in the air, like a secret holding its breath. Adrian closed his eyes for a moment, exhausted. Lina thought he had drifted off, but when she adjusted his pillow, his voice returned, faint but clear. You remind me of someone, he said again, the same words he had spoken earlier. Someone I should have protected. Her heartbeat stumbled. Sir, who? His eyes opened, filled with a sadness that seemed older than the mansion itself. A woman, he said softly. Kind. Brave. Too good for the world she was given. Lina felt a strange shiver pass through her, as if something unseen had brushed her shoulder. She leaned closer. What happened to her? Adrian's throat worked as he swallowed. I failed her, he whispered. And she paid the price. His fingers tightened weakly around hers before slipping away. Lina waited, expecting him to continue, but his breathing steadied and his eyes drifted shut again. She sat back in the chair, heart thudding, mind racing. Who was this woman? Why did he keep looking at her as if she carried her ghost? And why did she feel, deep in her bones, that whatever Adrian had been holding on to for years was about to pull her into a truth she was not ready for? The mansion creaked softly as the wind shifted outside. Lina sat in the dim glow of the lamp, watching the man who had summoned her to stay one night for reasons he still refused to reveal. She had no idea that before sunrise, everything she thought she knew about him, and about her own life, would unravel piece by piece, beginning with the secret locked inside that small wooden box on the nightstand. The lamp in Adrian Hale's bedroom flickered softly as the storm outside thickened, and Lina found herself glancing again at the small wooden box on the nightstand, the one he told her she would understand when the time came. She did not dare touch it, yet she felt its presence tugging at her thoughts like a quiet whisper. Adrian's breathing grew uneven, pulling her attention back to him. She rose from the chair and leaned close, adjusting his blanket the way the doctor had taught her. His eyelids fluttered open, revealing the same tired blue eyes that had watched empires rise and fall. Lina, he murmured, voice rough like gravel. You are still here. You asked me to stay, sir, she answered softly. I am not going anywhere. A faint smile pulled at the corner of his lips. Most people do not stay when things become difficult. It is human nature to step away from what is breaking. Lina felt a pang in her chest. You are not breaking, she whispered. You are fighting. He closed his eyes as if her words carried a warmth he had not felt in years. She sat back down, studying him with quiet concern, and after a long moment he spoke again. There is something I want to show you, he said, barely audible. But I need a moment. He tried to lift his hand toward the wooden box, but the tremor in his fingers was too strong. Lina reached out instinctively, her hand steadying his wrist before he could strain himself. Do not move, sir, she said. Just tell me what you need. Adrian let out a slow breath that rattled deep in his chest. That box, he whispered. It belongs to someone I loved. Someone I failed. Someone who deserved a better ending. His gaze drifted to the ceiling again, and he swallowed as if forcing down years of regret. Her name was Elena. Lina felt her fingers go cold. Her mother's name was Elena. Before she could speak, Adrian continued, each word pulled from a place inside him that had remained locked for too long. She worked at a small diner near the construction site where I started my first company. I was nobody then, just a man with big ideas and empty pockets. But she treated me like I mattered. His breath shook with memory. She used to bring me extra soup on cold nights. She said kindness did not cost anything, so she would give it freely. And his voice cracked. I loved her for it. For seeing me before anyone else did. Lina's heart pounded painfully as she stared at him, unable to form a single word. Adrian's eyes shimmered with something raw when he looked at her again. You look so much like her, Lina. The way you move. The way you speak. The way you carry sorrow quietly, like you do not want anyone to notice. He coughed, gripping the sheet, and she quickly steadied him again. Sir, please rest. This is too much for tonight. No, he whispered, shaking his head weakly. There is more you need to know. The wind howled outside, rattling the old window pines. Lina felt the room closing in around her as the truth began forming in fragments she did not want to assemble. Elena disappeared from my life before I had the courage to tell her how I felt, Adrian said. Years later, I found out she had fallen sick, and she had a little girl she was raising alone. Lina felt her breath vanish. I wanted to help, Adrian continued. I paid her hospital bills anonymously. It was all I could do. And when she passed, his voice trembled with grief that age had not softened. I searched for the child she left behind. But the trail went cold. A single tear slid down Lina's cheek. She did not notice she was holding her breath until her lungs begged for air. Adrian watched her closely, his expression full of a heartbreak that mirrored her own confusion. Lina, he whispered, reaching for her hand with trembling fingers. Tell me something. Your mother, what was her full name? Lina opened her mouth, but no sound came out at first. The room felt impossibly still, the truth pressing against her ribs like a weight she was not ready to lift. Finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, she answered. Lina Martinez. Adrian's eyes widened, the color draining from his face, not from illness but from the force of a realization he had feared and hoped for in equal measure. His grip tightened around her hand, desperate and trembling. The wooden box on the nightstand seemed to pulse with unspoken truth. And in that dim room, under the storm's restless whisper, Lina understood that whatever was inside that box was not just a secret. It was the piece of her past she had spent her whole life missing. For a long moment, Adrian Hale did not speak. His fingers tightened around Lina's hand, not with strength, but with a trembling urgency that came from somewhere deeper than pain. The storm outside roared against the old windows, but inside the room everything felt impossibly still, as if the house itself was holding its breath for the truth that had finally stepped into the light. Lina struggled to breathe as she watched the realization settle across Adrian's face. Lina Martinez, he repeated slowly, as if the name itself carried a lifetime he had lost. Lina, your mother was Lina Martinez. She nodded, her throat too tight for words. Adrian shut his eyes for a moment, and when he opened them again they shimmered with something between disbelief and a grief that had never healed. I looked for you, he whispered. I searched for years. I asked every hospital, every shelter, every community home. I thought I would never find you. Lina felt her own breath shudder. Why? She managed to whisper. Why look for me at all? Adrian's voice wavered. Because when your mother died, I made a promise. I swore that I would find her daughter and give her the life Elena never had. I failed her once. I would not fail her again. His words sank into Lina's chest like a weight and a wound at the same time. She remembered the nights her mother worked herself sick at a diner. She remembered the stacks of unpaid medical bills, the way her mother smiled even when she was too weak to stand, the way she whispered, "Kindness will save you, mi amor." And now here he was, this dying billionaire who had lived in a world so far from hers, telling her that her mother had once been the light in his darkest years. I did not know, Lina whispered, voice cracking. I never knew anyone helped us. I thought it was the hospital, or for charity. Adrian shook his head slowly. It was me. It was all I could do. I did not dare approach her. I thought I had lost the right. His hand slipped slightly, and Lina steadied it against her palm. His touch was cold now, colder than it had been an hour before. She felt the urgency beneath his skin, as if time itself was thinning between them. Sir, she whispered, you should rest. We can talk about this when you feel stronger. There is no later, Lina, he said quietly. There is only this moment. Those words cut through her like ice. Adrian turned his head slightly toward the nightstand. The box, he murmured. Open it. Lina hesitated, but when she saw the pleading in his eyes, she rose from the chair. Her hand shook as she reached for the wooden box. The brass lock, despite its age, opened with a soft click. Inside was a folded photograph, a silver bracelet, and a stack of letters tied with a ribbon that had faded from red to soft pink over the years. Lina lifted the photograph first. Her breath broke. It was her mother, young and radiant, standing beside a small diner with a smile that lit up her entire face. She looked healthier, happier than Lina had ever seen her. She kept that picture, Adrian whispered. She said it reminded her of the one time her life felt full of hope. Lina's eyes blurred as she held the silver bracelet next. It was simple, with tiny flower engravings along the band. She recognized it instantly. Her mother used to tell her the story of a bracelet she lost long before Lina was born, given to her by a man she cared about but never saw again. Lina swallowed hard. She talked about this, she whispered. She said she lost it during a move, but she always touched her wrist like she could still feel it there. Adrian closed his eyes tightly, pain and regret seeping through every breath. She gave it to me, he said. I kept it because she was the only person who ever made me feel like more than a man chasing an empire. Lina's gaze drifted to the letters. Dozens of them. All addressed to her mother. All unopened. She never received them, Adrian said weakly. She moved, changed jobs, disappeared from every record. I kept writing anyway. I kept hoping. Lina felt something inside her fracture. Why did you keep all of this? Adrian looked at her with a tenderness that hurt to witness. Because I knew one day I might find her daughter. His voice grew smaller, almost fading. I wanted you to know your mother was loved. Truly loved. Lina held the bracelet against her chest, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. She could not speak. She could barely breathe. Adrian watched her with eyes that were beginning to dim. I need you to forgive me, he whispered. For being too late. For failing her. For failing you. Lina shook her head, her voice finally breaking free. You did not fail us. But Adrian's gaze drifted toward the ceiling again, unfocused, distant, as if something inside him was slipping. His fingers twitched weakly in her hand. The storm outside rumbled deep across the sky. And Lina, holding the box of her mother's hidden past, felt the terrifying truth that time was running out. The silver bracelet trembled in Lina's hands as the storm outside rolled deeper across the night sky, but inside the dim bedroom, time seemed to move in slow motion. Adrian Hale's breath had turned shallow, the rise and fall of his chest growing smaller with every passing second. Lina sat beside him, her heart pounding as she tried to piece together the truth that had crashed into her life in the span of a single hour. The photograph of her mother, the letters written in a hand she now recognized, the bracelet her mother thought she had lost forever, all lay beside her on the bed like fragments of a life she never knew existed. Adrian's eyes fluttered open again, struggling to focus. "Lina," he whispered, barely audible, "there is more you need to understand." She leaned in, brushing her tears away with the back of her hand. "I am here, sir. I am listening." His gaze softened with a sadness deeper than anything she had ever seen. "Your mother never stopped loving you. She worked herself to the bone to keep you safe. She told me once that she wanted you to grow up believing the world was kind, even if she had to suffer for it." Lina felt her breath catch as childhood memories flooded her, the late nights her mother came home exhausted, the gentle smile she forced even when she had nothing left to give, the warmth of her hands when she tucked Lina into bed. Adrian continued, his voice growing weaker by the second. "When I found out she was gone, I could not forgive myself. I had the power, the money, the influence to change her fate, but I waited too long. I waited until the world had already taken her away from me." Lina placed her hand gently over his. "You did what you could. You helped her when no one else did." "It was not enough," he murmured. "I should have gone to her. I should have fought for her." And now, his words dissolved into a harsh cough that shook his entire body. Lina steadied him quickly, fear tightening in her throat. "Please, sir, save your strength." Adrian shook his head slowly. "There is no strength left to save. What I have now is time, and even that is slipping." He reached weakly toward the letters on the bed. Lina handed them to him, and he placed them gently in her lap. "These are yours now," he whispered. "They were written for your mother, but they are part of your story too. Do not let her memory fade. She was braver than I ever was." Lina held the letters against her chest, feeling the weight of every unopened envelope. "I will not forget her," she whispered. "I promise." Adrian's eyes softened, relief flickering across them like the last glow of a dying flame. "Good," he said. "Because there is one more thing you must know." He paused, gathering what little strength he had. His next words came out as a fragile tremor. "Lina, your mother did not push me away because she stopped caring. She left because she was protecting you." Lina's heart lurched. "Protecting me from what?" Adrian's jaw tightened with visible pain. "From my world," he whispered. "From the people who saw me as a ladder and would have seen her as a weakness. From the power struggles, the greed, the danger that follows wealth like a shadow. She knew what being connected to me would cost her. So she walked away and carried the burden alone." Lina felt tears burn hot against her eyes. She should not have had to carry it by herself. "I know," he whispered. "And I am sorry. For everything." His voice faded until she could barely hear him. "I failed her, and I cannot fail you too." Lina squeezed his hand firmly. "You are not failing me." His eyes glistened, and for a moment she thought he might smile. But then his gaze shifted toward the door. Footsteps echoed faintly down the hallway. Someone was approaching. Adrian's expression darkened with fear. "Lina," he gasped, his voice breaking, "you are not safe here if..." But before he could finish, the bedroom door began to open, and Lina felt the air shift with a tension she did not understand. She turned slowly, her pulse thundering in her ears, as a shadow stepped into the room, carrying a danger she had never seen coming. The door creaked open with a slow, deliberate push, and the moment the shadow crossed the threshold, Lina felt Adrian's hand tense weakly in hers. A tall man stepped inside, dressed in an expensive charcoal suit that clashed with the hour and the storm outside. His expression was sharp, cold, and calculating. He glanced first at Adrian, then at Lina, and a chill ran down her spine. "Uncle Adrian," the man said, his voice smooth but edged with something dark. "I heard you were not doing well." "I did." not expect visitors. Adrian struggled to shift upright, his breath catching with the effort. Elias, he rasped. This is not your business tonight. Elias Hale, Adrian's nephew, smiled in a way that never reached his eyes. Everything in this estate is my business. Especially now. Lina felt Adrian's fingers tremble in hers, and she realized this was the danger he had tried to warn her about. Elias stepped closer to the bed, hands clasped behind his back. Imagine my surprise, he said, when I found out the staff were told to stay out of the East Wing. And then I see you, Uncle, meeting privately with a maid in the middle of the night. His gaze slid to Lina with a cold interest. And not just any maid. The one Mother complained about. The one who asks too many questions. The one who lingers where she does not belong. Lina wanted to shrink back, but Adrian squeezed her hand, silently telling her not to move. Elias, Adrian said, voice weakening, leave her out of this. Why? Elias asked. She seems very involved already. His eyes flicked to the wooden box on the bed. Unless I am mistaken, that box has not been opened in over 20 years. Adrian's breath hitched, and Lina felt the panic rising in her chest. Elias stepped closer and leaned over the bed, ignoring his uncle's obvious pain. You were supposed to sign the succession documents, he murmured. The board expects you to name your heir. I am the only logical choice. Yet, instead of finalizing anything, you summon a staff member into your room and whisper secrets into her ear. His voice sharpened. What exactly do you think you are doing? Adrian tried to speak, but a violent cough overtook him. Lina reached forward to steady him, but Elias grabbed her wrist and yanked her back. Do not touch him, he snapped. You think I cannot see what is happening? You think I do not know why he is clinging to you? Lina felt anger spark through her fear. I am here because he asked me to stay. He is sick. Let go of me. Elias's grip tightened painfully. You are lying, he said coldly. Women like you always are. You see a dying billionaire and think of opportunity. You think if you hover close enough, cry enough tears, maybe he will reward you. His eyes narrowed. Are you after his money? His estate? His name? Lina felt heat burn behind her eyes. I did not even know who he was to my family until tonight, she said. I am not after anything. Elias laughed, the sound cold as the marble floors beneath them. Please. You expect me to believe you did not target him the moment you saw he was vulnerable. Adrian forced his voice forward through the pain. Elias, enough. Leave her alone. Elias turned to him with a sharp pivot. Or what? You can barely breathe. You are not going to stop anything. He leaned closer, and his tone dropped into something venomous. You always made mistakes when it came to women. First that waitress years ago, and now, on your deathbed, this maid. Lina felt her entire body freeze. Elias did not notice, or did not care. Do you know what the board would think, he continued, if they knew you were spending your final hours entrusting family assets to a stranger? You think they would accept it? They would tear this house apart to undo whatever nonsense you put in writing. Lina looked at Adrian, whose breathing was growing thinner by the second. Sir, she whispered, terrified, please do not talk. Save your strength. But Adrian shook his head faintly. Lina, the drawer. She understood instantly. She moved toward the nightstand, but Elias blocked her path. No, he snapped. You are done here. Whatever my uncle thought he was hiding, I will take care of it. He stepped toward Adrian's bed with a purpose that made Lina's stomach twist. Adrian's voice cracked with urgency. Lina, do not let him touch anything. Elias turned his back to her, which was his mistake. Lina reached past him in one swift motion, grabbed the drawer handle, and yanked it open. Inside was a set of documents sealed with Adrian's personal crest. Elias spun around, fury igniting in his eyes. Put that down. But Lina clutched the folder to her chest, her voice trembling but steady. No. Not this time. Elias took one step toward her. Then another. And in that instant, Adrian's frail voice filled the room with a force that did not match his body. Elias, stay away from her. It was a command. A final warning. And Elias knew it. But he was not done. Not even close. Elias froze for only a moment at Adrian Hale's warning, but the hesitation vanished as quickly as it came. The storm outside crashed against the windows, thunder shaking the old estate, and Lina felt the weight of the sealed documents pressed tightly against her chest. She did not know exactly what they contained, but the way Adrian had protected them with his last strength told her they were important, perhaps life-changing, perhaps dangerous. Elias stepped toward her again, slower this time, as if approaching a trapped animal. "Give me the folder, Lina," he said, voice smooth but sharp like a blade hidden under silk. "You have no idea what you are holding." Lina backed up until her legs hit the edge of a dresser. "He told me to take it," she said, breath trembling, "and I will not let you touch it." Elias gave a small, humorless laugh. "You think he cares about you? You think I am going to let a maid destroy my future because my uncle is delirious on his deathbed?" Adrian forced himself upright despite the pain twisting his face. "Elias," he rasped, "you do not deserve this house. Or this company. I have seen what you have become." Elias's expression shifted, the polite mask cracking to reveal something cold and furious beneath. "You had your chance to choose an heir," he hissed. "You never did. You kept everyone guessing, kept the board waiting, kept the family in limbo. And now you expect me to stand here while you hand everything to a stranger you met less than 2 years ago." Lina felt her heart race but stayed silent. Adrian's breathing grew more ragged, each inhale sounding like a fight he was losing. "She is not a stranger," he said. "She is Elena's daughter." Elias's eyes widened, not with surprise but with triumph. "Exactly," he said. "The daughter of a waitress you were once foolish enough to adore. Do you think anyone will accept this? Do you think the board will let the company fall into the hands of some girl they know nothing about?" He stepped closer to Lina, his voice dropping into a threat. "You are nothing to them. And you are nothing to me." Before Lina could react, Elias lunged forward, grabbing her wrist in an iron grip. She gasped at the sudden pain, struggling to keep hold of the folder as he tried to pry it from her fingers. "Let go," Elias snarled. "This does not belong to you." "Stop," Lina cried, trying to twist away. "You are hurting me." Adrian pushed himself further upward in the bed, fighting for every breath. "Elias, leave her, now." "You cannot even stand," Elias scowled. "You have no power here anymore." With a final jerk, he ripped the folder from Lina's hands. She stumbled forward, catching herself on the dresser, her wrist throbbing. Elias opened the folder with a victorious smirk, but the moment his eye scanned the first page, the color drained from his face. His expression shifted from triumph, to shock, to rage. "You signed it," Elias whispered, voice shaking. "You actually signed this." Lina watched him, fear tightening her stomach. "What is it?" she asked. Elias glared at her, hatred burning in his eyes. "It is a legal transfer," he spat. "Of assets. Authority. Control." He slammed the folder shut. "He named you." Lina froze. "Named me what?" Elias stepped toward her slowly, fury radiating off him. "The primary custodian of the Hale Foundation. The controlling beneficiary of the estate's humanitarian branch. And the executor of his personal assets." Lina's breath stopped. "No," she whispered. "That cannot be right. Why would he trust me with that?" Adrian's voice, thin but steady, filled the room. "Because she is Elena's daughter. And because she is the only one I trust to use what I built for something good." Elias spun on him. "You are insane. This will never stand. I will contest it. The board will contest it." Everyone will contest it. The documents are binding, Adrian said. And the board cannot touch my personal estate. You will not live long enough to defend this, Elias growled. He lifted the folder slightly. But I can destroy it. Panic shot through Lina. Do not, she pleaded. Please do not. Elias took a step toward the fireplace. Watch me, he said. But before he could take another step, Adrian's voice cut through the room with a force that shattered the moment. Elias. If you burn that, your life will fall apart faster than you can imagine. Elias paused, gripping the folder tightly, his face twisting between fear and hatred. And in that breathless, electric silence, the storm outside seemed to still, as if the entire world was waiting for what would happen next. For a moment, Elias Hale stood. Frozen near the fireplace, gripping the folder so tightly that the edges bent beneath his fingers, and the storm outside rumbled as if echoing the fury building inside him. Adrian Hale lay half-reclined against his pillows, fighting for every breath, yet his voice carried a weight that made the entire room feel smaller. Elias, he warned again, put the documents down. Elias turned slowly, his expression twisted with desperation. You think you can threaten me? You think anything you say matters now? Adrian's breathing hitched, but his eyes remained sharp. Yes, he whispered, because you know what is in the safe behind my desk. Lina watched Elias's face drain of color. His grip on the folder faltered. You did not, Elias said in disbelief. You would not. I did, Adrian rasped. Every misappropriated dollar. Every falsified report. Every board manipulation. Every cover-up. I documented all of it. Elias's jaw clenched so tightly that the muscles trembled. You would ruin your own blood. Adrian closed his eyes for a brief, pained moment. I would protect my company. And the people you hurt. The air shifted, tension coiling like a spring between them. Lina stood motionless beside the dresser, clutching her wrist where Elias had grabbed her, her breath trembling as she tried to understand how deep this family war went. You cannot prove anything, Elias said, but his voice betrayed him. Those documents are authenticated, Adrian interrupted. And duplicated. The legal team will release them the moment that folder burns. Elias's hand shook. The storm boomed again, lightning flashing against the windows, illuminating his face with a flicker of dread. For a long moment no one moved. Then Elias exhaled sharply, the fight leaking out of him like air from a punctured tire. He lowered the folder, his voice trembling with resentment. All of this for her? He jerked his chin toward Lina. For a maid? For a girl you barely know. Adrian's gaze softened as he looked at Lina. I know enough. I know what matters. Elias let out a harsh laugh. You think she will stay here once you are gone? You think she cares about you? Lina stepped forward, anger cutting through her fear. You do not know anything about me, she said. I stayed because he asked. I stayed because he was alone. Elias scoffed. And you expect me to believe that you do not want his money? I do not, Lina said firmly. I just want the truth. Adrian nodded faintly, approving her courage. Elias, he said softly, leave now. Let me have peace. For the first time, Elias looked uncertain, his confidence cracking under the weight of Adrian's gaze. But then he straightened, bitterness settling into his features like a permanent scar. This is not over, he hissed. The board will never allow this. You have doomed everything. He threw the folder onto the bed, the papers spilling across the blankets. Adrian flinched at the sudden movement, and Lina rushed to steady him. Elias watched her with a mixture of disgust and envy, then turned sharply toward the door. As he gripped the handle, he paused and looked back. You chose wrong, uncle, he said. And she will pay for it. Lina felt fear crawl up her spine, but Adrian squeezed her hand weakly. Ignore him, Adrian whispered. His power ends tonight. The door slammed shut behind Elias, and the echo lingered like smoke in the air. Lina gathered the scattered papers with trembling hands and placed them safely back in the folder. Adrian watched her, breathing shallow, his face pale. "Lina," he whispered, voice fragile, "thank you for not letting him destroy everything." She sat beside him again, her eyes filled with worry. "You should not talk. You are in pain." "There is something important," he insisted, lifting his hand slowly toward her cheek. "I need you to hear it." She leaned closer, afraid she was about to lose him before he could speak. His eyes softened with a tenderness that made her heart ache. "Lina," he breathed, "you were the last good thing to walk into my life." Her throat tightened. "Sir, please. And I need you to know that the night your mother died, she told the nurse something. Something meant for you." Lina's breath caught. "What did she say?" Adrian exhaled weakly, his heartbeat faint beneath the sheets. "She said," his voice broke, and tears gathered in the corners of his eyes. "She said, tell my daughter she was loved twice." Lina felt her knees weaken. "Twice," she whispered. "By who?" Adrian looked at her with all the love and regret he had carried for decades. "By her mother, and by me." A tear slid down his cheek. And Lina felt the world shift under her feet as the truth hit her like a tidal wave. The words hung in the air with a weight that silenced even the storm outside, and Lina felt her breath crumble in her chest as if the truth itself had reached inside and stolen the air from her lungs. Loved twice. Once by the mother who sacrificed everything, and once by the man lying before her, pale and fading, yet still trying to give her more than life had ever offered. Adrian Hale's hand trembled against her cheek, and Lina covered it with both of hers, holding on as if she could keep him tethered to this world. "Sir," she whispered, her voice breaking, "you still have time. You can rest. We can talk again in the morning." He gave a faint smile, one so small and fragile that it felt like it might shatter. "Lina, there is no morning for me." She shook her head fiercely. "Do not say that." "It is all right," he breathed. "I have made peace with what is coming. But I needed you to know the truth before I go." His thumb brushed her cheek weakly. "I failed your mother, but I will not fail you." Tears spilled down Lina's face, falling onto his hand like tiny confessions. "You did not fail us," she whispered. "You tried. You cared. And that matters more than you think." Adrian's breathing grew rougher, every inhale a battle he was losing. Lina felt fear coil around her ribs. "Please," she whispered, "let me call the doctor." But he shook his head slowly. "Stay," he murmured. "That is all I want." She leaned closer, forehead touching the back of his hand, grounding herself in the warmth that was fading by the second. "I am here," she whispered. "I am not leaving." Adrian's eyes softened, a tender light flickering inside them, like the last glow of a lantern before the flame goes out. "You look like her," he said, voice trembling. "The same eyes. The same strength. The same kindness." His breath hitched, and Lina felt panic rise. "Adrian," she whispered urgently, the first time she dared to speak his name, "please stay with me." He opened his eyes one last time, focusing on her with a clarity that pierced her heart. "Lina," he breathed, barely audible, "I am proud of you." And with that, his fingers slowly loosened in hers. His chest rose once, then again, then stilled. The room fell silent. The storm outside softened into a distant murmur, as if even the sky bowed its head. Lina sat frozen, her hand still wrapped around his, unwilling to accept the stillness settling over him. She whispered his name again, softer this time. "Adrian." But he did not answer. A single tear slid down his cheek, the final mark of a life lived with regret and a love finally spoken too late. Lina leaned forward, brushing that tear away with trembling fingers. "Thank you," she whispered through her own tears. "For loving her. For loving me." Minutes passed before she could bring herself to stand. She gently folded Adrian's hands over his chest, placed the silver bracelet on his wrist, and closed his eyes with a tenderness she wished he could feel. When she stepped away, the wooden box lay open on the bed, the letters from the past finally reunited with the truth of the present. The next days moved like a blur. The legal team arrived. The board was informed. The documents Elias tried to destroy were validated and enforced. Every piece of Adrian's final wishes became law. Elias fought, of course, but Adrian had prepared more than anyone expected. His evidence against his nephew was overwhelming. By the end of the week, Elias was removed from all company affairs, his reputation unraveling just as Adrian had warned. And Lina, overwhelmed and grieving, found herself standing outside the Hale Estate with a new set of keys in her hand and a weight on her shoulders she never asked for. But inside that weight was something else too. Hope. She used her inheritance exactly the way Adrian had predicted. She transformed the estate's humanitarian branch into a foundation named Elena's Light, dedicated to supporting single mothers and families trapped in medical debt, just as her own mother had been. On the day of the foundation's opening, Lina placed the photograph of her mother on a small stand beside the ribbon. She touched the silver bracelet on her wrist and whispered, "I hope you can see this." As the doors opened and the first families walked through, Lina felt something warm settle in her chest. A whisper of a legacy. A promise fulfilled. A love that had crossed decades to reach her. And in that moment, she understood. Her mother had been right. Kindness does come back. Sometimes in ways that break you. Sometimes in ways that save you. And sometimes, if you are very lucky, in ways that do both.